please, 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 God, you have to make this thing happen. Today, I'll be talking about prayer of faith versus prayer of desperation. But first, let me tell you about my 91-day app-based online challenge called Honeydew Health in 91 that can be found at www.honeydewhealthin91.com. And this is a program where you get feeling better through better food choices, moving your body more, and having better self-care so that you can be all that you and God intend you to be. Okay. Prayer of desperation. Please, please, please make this thing happen the way that I want it to happen. And the prayer of desperation is one that is done with not very much faith. It's really like, oh, I just can't possibly see this thing happen. So the harder I pray, the better things will turn out. Please, please, please. Then there's the prayer of faith. This one isn't so desperate. This one is more faithful. So some people say, well, God is always there. He's like the wavelength of like a radio station or the Wi-Fi that's running through the air. He's always there, but you're the one that has to tap into it. So when you have a prayer of desperation, you're kind of in this lower level, barely subsisting. But a prayer of faith, you tap more into the good wavelength of where God is. Now, why might we not be able to stay on that level where we want to be? Well, there's a few reasons that I think where we stay in that prayer of desperation. One is the ego. We think that we are more powerful. We think that our harder praying will make something happen better. We might have fear that something's going to happen, and thus we must pray very hard because really we don't have faith that the thing that needs to happen will happen, even if it's not really the thing that we want to have happen. There's regret from the past. So much gets written on our mind of the past and what it meant to us and how it might have messed us up. So regret from the past can slow us down and keep us on a lower level. Shame of who we think we erroneously are makes us feel less, and so that keeps us lower. When you're able to have more faith and let go of the past and let go of ego that says that I am better than others and that I know better than God, basically letting go of the shame, you're able to open up. And when you can open up, you let go of that desperation of this has to be my way. I am praying so hard that this thing I want will happen. And instead, at that point, you level up to that wavelength where God is. He's like, yeah, I'm right here. I've been right here. You just need to level up with me here in faith, not fear, not ego, not regret, not shame. I like to think of it as praying in faith as a tango of wills with God. So I'll say, God, this is really what I want. And he'll say, well, but this is really what you need. And then I'll say, well, how can I make it so it's more my way? And he'll say, but I know what's better. So I'm handing my will to him and I'm saying, okay, so what should I pray for? And he says, you pray for this thing that's completely different than the thing that you were so desperately praying for. And I say, okay, thy will be done. And then he takes it for a little while and then he hands it back to me and says, okay, I need you to customize this to yourself because you are you. I say, okay, well, this would be the way I'd like to see it. Is that okay? And I hand it back to him and he says, let's tweak it a little bit. Then in the tango, he swirls me back and here I am. And I say, okay, I can handle this. Is this what I pray for? He's like, bingo, that's what you pray for. And we tango together around the dance floor, back and forth, staying at this level where I'm not in charge. My ego isn't dominating this prayer. It's my checking in with God. Well, how about this? Well, how about this? And he sends it back. And pretty soon we are on the same level. Sometimes I think of myself and humanity really as little toddlers, and we think that we know that we want candy for dinner. Candy's what we want. Give it to me now. Please, please, please. I want candy for breakfast. I want candy for dinner. Give it to me all day long. And as a parent, you say, well, candy's not the best thing for you. Even though you really, really want it, it's not the best thing for you. God is like that parent who says, I know that this is please, please, please what you want so bad, but it's really not the thing that's best for you. Even though you're praying for it so hard, there's this other thing that is so much more nourishing for you. And you need to get back on this level with me, and then it will be just right. So how does this all have to do, prayer of faith, with healing? because that's my specialty, is how we combine the physical and the spiritual into one happy whole. Well, with healing, you're able to get into a space of forgiveness. And would you believe that forgiveness is healing to your body? One time I went to a healing coach, specialist guy, who he told me a story about this lady who walked into his practice, and this guy said to her, this coach, we'll call him, said, "What's been happening in your life?" And she said, "Oh, nothing. Everything's fine." He's like, "Your ankles are huge. They are totally swollen." And she says, "Oh, it's not that big a deal. I'm having a hard time getting around, but it'll go away eventually." And he said, "Have you had a problem with somebody lately in your life?" And she said, "Well, yeah, my son isn't doing what I want, and I keep telling him that he should do this thing, and he's not doing what I want him to, and he's just really making my life hard, and he's doing things that are making things happen that shouldn't be happening, and I just really am struggling with him. But that has nothing to do with my ankles." And the guy said, "Okay, let's go through a little forgiveness process." And they started talking through it, and she talked about how frustrated she was with this son, and she couldn't forgive him. And pretty soon the coach had her in a space where she finally could forgive her son. And a couple of weeks later, she came back and her ankles were completely fine. I have heard story after story and seen it in my own life of how forgiveness heals. You let go of the baggage. You just let go of all that stuff in the past, of that ego, of the nonsense that we don't need to have. And we can become more whole because our spirit is in a more whole space. And I think that's what healing and getting in connection with God does, is it puts us in alignment. And thus it makes our body more open to the messages that God would have us know from our spirit, that then gets translated to our body. And sometimes that translation, that message to our body, well, oftentimes, a lot of times, is sickness or disease or unwellness. And if we are in alignment with God, if we are in forgiveness, if we have a more pure spirit, then there's less reason for us to have to be out of alignment, which means our body can be more whole. I think it's miraculous to think about how our spirits can, like I said, tango with God, so that he's like, wait, something's off here. Let me speak to you. Let me tell you what needs to happen. Here's what you pray for. Here's what to clear up in your spirit so that your body can likewise heal. Also, if you pray in faith, in the way that we've been talking about, according to God's will, and in that tango, why wouldn't miracles happen? Why wouldn't God say, "Sure, you're in the right space, you're on the right level. I would love to answer that prayer and answer that miracle for you," that prayer of faith and that miracle. So prayer really is a gateway to our receiving physical wholeness. I hear some people say, "God doesn't really care about what happens in your life. He has millions and billions of people to care about. Just take a path and just go with it. Just make a choice and just go with it. He really doesn't care." And I say, yeah, you can have that attitude. If you don't want to think that he cares, then go ahead and do it on your own, ego. Or really think that he does care about the sparrow that falls and the smallest of details. He does care, and he does want to guide you and help you to know what to pray for so that you can have wholeness. So I believe God does care, that you can have wholeness through a prayer of faith. So join me in my 91-day app-based challenge at www.honeydewhealthin91.com.